Ancient human remains discovered in a Riverdale neighborhood have been under 24-hour supervision for more than 9 months straight.
Discoveries of giant skeletons have puzzled people for centuries and raised questions about ancient civilizations.
Skeletons that measured between 7 and 8 feet in height, which, for ancient man, would have been rather significant.
But worry not, as I have compiled the answers for you.
It probably started out quite gently with pet mummies, because people who loved their pets wanted the pets with them in their afterlife.
From archaeologists stumbling over petrified remains to random people making some groundbreaking discoveries.
Something that we can have DNA tested or carbon dated, see what was happening with this human that was 8 foot tall.
These shocking videos will have your jaw dropped, so stay tuned.
Skeletons that measured between 7 and 8 feet in height, which, for ancient man, would have been rather significant.
The Lovelock Cave, discovered in Nevada in 1913, is famous for many ancient discoveries. However, the discovery made by archaeologists recently is completely different from all the others. They found remains here that are believed to belong to a tribe of red-haired giants known as the Sitaka. They also found artifacts, treasures, and skeletal remains inside the cave. I think all these things are a mystery in themselves, which might not be easily solved.
Pieces of clothing, which were so big, it looked as though they were worn by giants.
Bulgarian vampires. The vampire graves were discovered in 2012 in a Bulgarian village called Sozopol. Archaeologists found 2 skeletons that were about 700 years old, dating back to the medieval period. They were unusual because they had iron rods or large iron nails driven through their chests, which was believed to be a method used to prevent the bodies from rising.
To
prevent suspected would-be vampires from turning into vampires, a group of brave men reopened their graves in the middle of the night and pierced the corpses with an iron or wooden rod.
In medieval Europe, it was common to fear that people who were not alive could become vampires. To stop this, they used methods like staking through the heart or burying the body with special rituals. The 2 skeletons found in Sozopol had been buried this way, leading researchers to believe they had been victims of these ancient vampire-fearing customs.
The interesting thing is that vampire cases were relatively rare, because in Sozopol we unearthed 700 Christian graves and found only 2 traces of anti-vampire manipulation.
Ancient giant skeleton. Back in 2017, a group of archaeologists were researching in Krabi Cave, Thailand, when they found a giant skeleton that was almost 12 meters long. It was a discovery that shocked all the experts. They didn't take the remains with them and left them there in the same condition. After some time, when their research was complete, the remains were made available to the public, and now people come from far and wide to see the giant. No one has been able to figure out its background story, but I'm sure it must have been the most dominant being on planet Earth in its time. Mummified pets.
Animal mummies were very common in ancient Egypt. It probably started out quite gently with pet mummies, because people who loved their pets wanted the pets with them in their afterlife.
Animal mummies were common in ancient Egypt, and it likely started with pet mummies. People loved their pets so much that they wanted to take them into the afterlife. So they decided to bury their pets with them, and the pets were mummified just like humans. The mummification was done very well, especially for a dog whose tail curls up, making it look like it might open its eyes and start wagging and barking. In addition to pets, many animals were mummified for religious and spiritual reasons. Egyptians believed that certain animals, like cats, birds, and even crocodiles, had sacred connections with gods. They also mummified animals to serve as offerings to the gods, or to accompany them in tombs for companionship in the afterlife.
Cut off the wingtips and the feet, and then they put the sort of liver and gizzards inside. So if you want gravy in the afterlife, you have everything you need for that.
Giant's hand.
To see something that we've been seeing since we were children
is in books and in movies is a powerful thing for us.
The alleged Yeti hand kept by Nepali monks has been a mysterious object for decades. The hand, reportedly brought to a monastery in the Tengboche region of Nepal in the 1950s, is displayed and preserved by monks. It is big, covered with hair, and resembles a human hand, but much bigger, which fuels the belief that it may belong to the Yeti. Over the years, scientists have examined the hand, but its origins remain unclear. It gained a lot of attention after being featured on the TV show Finding Bigfoot, where the team investigated its possible connection to the Yeti.
They believe this was from a Yeti. It seems there's always an answer, and yet they can't provide real evidence.
9-foot skeletons.
There was no other statuary that was in human form and size and that level of detail and sophistication.
In 1974, a farmer in Sardinia accidentally discovered a huge stone head while plowing his fields, leading to the uncovering of over 5,000 fragments of statues. These statues, which include depictions of warriors and archers, stand around 8 feet tall. They were carved by the Nuragic people, an ancient civilization that lived on Sardinia almost 4,000 years ago. These statues are detailed and unique for their time, making them one of the most important archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. Some researchers, like Hugh Newman, believe these statues could represent actual giants. The statues were found in places that seemed to be burial sites for giants, and in 1901, there were reports of 9-foot skeletons being discovered in the same region.
Sardinia's myths and stories about who these people were typically talk about giants.
Giant's tooth found.
Something that we can have DNA tested or carbon dated, see what was happening with this human that was 8 foot tall.
In the Puckett's Cave exploration, Bill and Brad spent several hours searching for physical evidence of an 8-foot tall human. While investigating the north wall, Brad noticed something white, which, upon closer inspection, turned out to be a massive tooth. Both of them speculated about its origins, considering possibilities like a bear's tooth, but dismissing them due to its lack of sharpness. The tooth seemed more human-like, and they wondered if it could belong to a giant human, as reports of ancient giant skulls and double rows of teeth had previously circulated. I guess they just found what they were looking for here.
So Brad and I are going back and forth speculating about what it might be. Could it be a bear tooth? Doesn't seem sharp enough. A deer? A cow? We're 70 feet up in a shelter cave.
5-meter skeleton. In 2014, a group of archaeologists from Adelaide University discovered a 5.3-meter hominid skeleton at the Uluru archaeological site in Australia. This discovery, along with finding an ancient megalithic civilization, surprised experts. The huge skeleton, which shouldn't theoretically exist, has raised numerous questions. Some suggest it could be a result of gigantism caused by excess growth hormones, though Professor Hans Zimmer of Adelaide University insists that this is just speculation. He believes more research is needed to understand the anomaly. The Amazonian giants. In 2008, a group of archaeologists discovered 2 skeletons in Leicestershire, England, during an excavation for a new housing development. The remains, dated to around 700 years ago, likely date back to the medieval period, around the 14th century. They were almost 8 feet tall, but what made this discovery so remarkable was the position of the skeletons. They were found side by side, with their hands clasped together, suggesting a deep connection between the 2 individuals. Now, what exactly happened with them at that time is probably a mystery that may never be solved. Giant Creature Cemetery. A group of scientists were doing their research at a burial site in the jungle near Kigali, Rwanda. But then they found something which was hard for them to believe. At first, they thought they had found ancient human settlements, but there were no signs of human life nearby. They were 7'8" tall giant beings that looked nothing like humans were around. There hasn't been much more information about them, but people have different beliefs about it. Some people think these beings might have come from another planet, while others think they might have been a part of humanity that went extinct. Dinosaur in Alberta. In 2011, a remarkable nodosaur fossil was discovered in Alberta, Canada, by a heavy equipment operator at Millennium Mine. This fossil was one of the best preserved of its kind, with incredible details such as its skin and armor. The nodosaur, which had lived around 110 million years ago during the Cretaceous period, was about 18 feet long and weighed approximately 3,000 pounds. Its exceptional preservation included armor, spikes which were likely used for defense, and even some of its skin, allowing scientists to have an idea into the life of an armored dinosaur. Cyclops statue. A group of experts were exploring caves in Greece when they came across something they had never expected to see. At first, everything seemed normal, but then they spotted a strange, petrified Cyclops. If you don't know its history, let me tell you. It's a one-eyed giant from Greek mythology, famous for its great strength and its unique single eye in the middle of its forehead. These experts thought that stories about it were just legends, but seeing one in front of them left them completely shocked. Only its head was properly visible, and its only eye on the forehead was clearly seen. They didn't continue exploring further and left the site. Ice Age Giant.
Over here, I have the mammoth leg bone, which is that massive bone.
In 2023, Henry Sadler, a middle school science teacher, made an incredible find while diving in a river in Florida. He discovered the humerus bone of a massive Columbian mammoth. It lived during the Pleistocene epoch, around 10,000 years ago. It was one of the largest species of mammoths and lived in North America during the Pleistocene epoch, roughly 10,000 years ago. These mammals were huge, standing about 14 feet tall at the shoulder, and were characterized by their long, curved tusks and thick coats of hair to survive in cold environments. This discovery confirmed that mammoths also once lived in Florida.
Something in this condition, in this size, is pretty awesome.
Bison Fight.
Spotted this unusual thing. It may even be, they think, prehistoric.
In January 2023, two men, Mike Ruth and Dave Jamerson, found an ancient bison fossil along the Missouri River near downtown Kansas City, Missouri. While scavenging the riverbank, they initially mistook the large specimen for driftwood, but upon closer inspection, they discovered it was a bison skull with horns attached. The skull, which measured 30 inches across, weighed about 15 pounds. They estimated the fossil to be older than 3,000 years, possibly from the Stone Age. Dr. Melissa Eaton, a local archaeologist, confirmed the find was indeed a bison, though further measurements and radiocarbon dating are needed to determine its exact age and species. It's possible the fossil is from an extinct species like Bison antiquus or Bison occidentalis, both of which roamed North America thousands of years ago.
I've never seen anything like that before. I mean, all I could find is bones and whatnot.
Stone Giant. A tourist was passing through the mountainous area of Israel when suddenly his attention was caught by something unusual. There was a giant structure that, at first, he thought might be a figment of his imagination. But when he looked closely, he realized it was actually a petrified giant. The giant figure was in a calm pose, as if it had spent its last moments there. Perhaps in ancient times, there were many things that are hard for us to believe today. Petrified giants. In different parts of the world, people see giant human-like statues on mountains and caves. Calling all of this a coincidence wouldn't be right, because so many petrified giants can't just randomly be found at different sites around the world. If we look into history, we might get an idea that giants were probably common among ancient humans. It's even said that they were not only strong and large, but also lived for hundreds of years. We may never know exactly how they ended up like this, with their bodies turning to stone. But over time, it will definitely become clear that they once existed. Giant with soldiers. A video was shared on social sites from an unknown source, and it completely confused every viewer. It was probably a video from the early 1990s, showing a Japanese festival being celebrated. But what puzzled everyone was the presence of a giant in it. The giant was casually moving among them as if it was completely normal. Everyone had different opinions about this. Some believed that the giant had secretly lived in a Japanese village, and the villagers never told anyone about its presence until someone secretly recorded footage of it. Others believed that such height was normal during that time. Ancient Croc. In Austin, Texas, a group of friends went exploring the woods and ended up going quite deep inside. When they were about to leave, they suddenly noticed something unusual near the rocks. It looked like the body of an animal, and when they got closer to check, they were shocked. It was the fossil of a giant crocodile, which was probably hundreds of years old. Its size was nothing like any normal one, and its mouth was just as big. They observed it for a while and then went back, but one thing was for sure. This crocodile must have been the most terrifying animal of its time. Wooden hand.
It's a hand wrapped around that rock.
This boy often went to the woods alone and spent his time there, but this time, he noticed something unusual. At first, he thought it was just a weird-shaped stone, but when he observed it closely, he was shocked. It looked like the fingers of some giant's hand, which seemed to make sense. Let me tell you why. There were also giant hand shapes on the mountains of Israel, which gave the idea that in ancient times, these beings existed in different parts of the world. So it wasn't impossible if these hands he had found in the woods were real. He observed them for a while and then left. But who knows? There might be more of its body parts somewhere there.
So weird. And those are solid.
Cardiff Giant. The Cardiff Giant, a giant stone figure discovered in 1869 by William C. Stubb Newell's farm in Cardiff, New York. People believed it was the remains of a biblical giant and came from far and wide to see it. However, it was later revealed that the Cardiff Giant was a hoax created by George Hull, a businessman from Iowa. Hull had the giant carved from gypsum and secretly buried on Newell's property. Even after the hoax was exposed, some still believed it was real. Today, the Cardiff Giant is displayed at the Farmers Museum in Cooperstown, New York. Dino Tail. In 2013, a well-preserved fossilized dinosaur tail was discovered in the Mexican desert. The tail, believed to be around 72 million years old, was found by a team of paleontologists from Mexico and the United States. The fossil is from a theropod dinosaur, likely related to the well-known species like Velociraptor or similar small carnivorous dinosaurs. The discovery was important because of how well the tail was preserved, with even the feathers still visible. This was a rare find because most dinosaur fossils found before this time had not shown such detailed features. The feathers on the tail suggest that some dinosaurs had feathers, which was a key piece of evidence supporting the theory that birds evolved from dinosaurs. Giant alien claw. In January 2016, a group of explorers discovered a strange three-fingered claw in an underground cave near the ancient city of Cusco, Peru. The claw was said to be big, suggesting it may have belonged to a creature at least 9 feet tall. Some researchers believed it could have been the hand of a giant alien humanoid. The claw was tested for authenticity, reportedly being verified as a genuine biological object with bone and skin tissues. It was sent to the US for further radiocarbon and DNA testing to uncover its true origins. Giant turtle. Stupendemys geographicus was a giant freshwater turtle that lived about 11.63 million years ago during the Miocene period. It was not only huge in size, but also had unique features. Fossils of this turtle were found in northern Venezuela, and experts believed it was the largest land turtle ever. Some of the turtle shells found were over 2.4 meters long, which was twice the size of the biggest modern turtles, like the Galapagos tortoise. One of the most interesting parts was a horn-like structure on the front of the male's shell. This horn may have been used to defend itself or fight other males. The fossils were so big that it took 7 people to carry one of the specimens, showing just how massive these turtles were. Sleeping giant.
Sleeping lady.
Mount Susitna, also known as the Sleeping Lady, has a story that goes beyond just being a mountain. The shape of the mountain, which looks like a woman lying on her back, is said to be the form of a giant woman named Susitna. According to locals, she was part of a peaceful group of giants. She was waiting for her fiancé, Nakatla, who had gone to resolve a conflict with another group of giants. Sadly, while Susitna waited, Nakatla lost his life in battle. Heartbroken, the remaining giants decided to let her stay in a deep, eternal sleep to protect her from the pain of the loss. Over time, nature enveloped her, forming the mountain we see today. Greece finding. A man was hiking in Greece when, suddenly, he noticed something unusual between the mountains on the opposite side. At first, he thought it was just a strange stone, but when he looked closely, he was shocked to realize it was a skull. From a distance, it didn't seem that large, but if looked at closely, it was definitely much bigger than a normal human head. How it ended up there is unknown, but its presence itself is a mystery. Many people believe that in ancient times, Greece had the largest giants, and who knows, this skull might belong to one of them. Giant crocodile discovered. In 2016, a major discovery was made by National Geographic grantee Federico Fonti and his research team in southern Tunisia. They uncovered the fossilized skeleton of a giant prehistoric crocodile that lived during the Cretaceous period, around 130 million years ago. The fossil was remarkable for its size, with the crocodile's head alone measuring more than 1.5 meters in length. The size and structure of this creature suggest it was a dominant predator of its time. The fossils show that these giant crocodiles lived 25 million years longer than scientists originally believed. Ancient Egypt. Egypt is a place where the more you explore, the more mysteries come to light. In 2011, archeologists were exploring the ancient palace of Avaris when they uncovered 16 human hands buried in 4 pits. 2 pits near the throne room each held 1 hand, while the other 2 outside the palace contained 14 hands. These remains, about 3,600 years old, were unusually large and may be tied to a ritual involving cutting off enemies' right hands as a symbol of removing their power, offering them to gods, or receiving gold as a reward. The hands might belong to specially chosen individuals, possibly suggesting a sacrificial ritual rather than a battlefield act. Giant bones. Let me take you back to 1911, when a group of miners discovered unusually large skeletons. These skeletons were almost 8 to 9 feet long, making it clear that they belonged to giants. The discovery included artifacts such as oversized sandals and evidence of burning at the cave entrance, aligning with Paiute oral history about a battle with red-haired giants, known as the Saidukatha. These beings were said to be cannibals and were defeated by the Paiute people, who trapped them in the cave and set it on fire. Over 100,000 artifacts were reportedly excavated from the site, and some human remains were displayed in museums for decades. However, the largest skulls and bones were later ceremonially reburied. Creepy mountain giant. Now, what I am about to show you will make you feel that giants still exist. A tourist was hiking in Ethiopia, but then he saw something unusual on the opposite mountain. At first, he thought another person was resting there, but when he looked closely, he was shocked. It was a giant who was probably secretly living there, and surprisingly, it was watching him. Just for information, only a few countries in the world have ancient giants in their history, and Ethiopia is one of them. So it's possible that this giant was really living there. Giants of West Virginia. In West Virginia, a group of mine workers found something that stunned them. At first, they saw some giant bones, and when they carefully explored the whole area, they realized these were the skeletal remains of giant humans, almost 9 feet long. Some locals had told the workers that the site had been home to giants since ancient times, but they hadn't believed it. However, now seeing all of this in front of them, they couldn't deny it. Who knows? There might be more remains in that area, and the whole place could have been the home of giants in ancient times. Cyclops Skull.
Cyclops were ferocious and huge man-eating giants that only had one great eye.
A group of farmers were digging in their field when they found something unusual. It was a huge bone, and at first, they had no idea what it was. But when they looked closely, they were stunned. It was a huge skull, and the most notable thing about it was its single eye. In case you're not sure what it was, let me tell you, it was a Cyclops, a giant humanoid being with a single eye located in the center of its forehead. They handed it over to experts, who later discovered that it was around 3 million years old and belonged to a creature that stood about 9 feet tall and weighed 6 tons. I am glad giants like this no longer exist in our world anymore.
The skeleton looked sort of human-like, only much bigger and a little stranger.
Giant finger mystery. In 1988, Swiss archaeologist Gregor Sperry bought a massive 16-inch long mummy finger on the black market in Egypt for $300. The finger, which appeared to be mummified, was believed by some to belong to an extinct giant ape, though no other remains of such creatures had been found. The finger was small and light, despite its large size. Sperry later returned to investigate, but found that the seller had vanished. Some theories suggest the finger could be linked to a giant race that helped build the pyramids, but there is no evidence to support this. Although there are paintings depicting giant humans, it's unclear whether these are symbolic or literal. Quetta Sleeping Woman. The Sleeping Beauty Mountain near Quetta in Pakistan is a natural sight, with its peaks forming the shape of a woman lying on her back. The arrangement of the mountains, when viewed from a specific angle, creates a silhouette resembling a reclining woman. The highest peak looks like the head, while others form the body, arms, and legs. This striking visual has led to the name Sleeping Beauty Mountain. Ancient find.
100-million-year-old dinosaur fossil in WA, the Elasmosaurus.
In 2022, a big discovery was made in Queensland, Australia, when fossil hunters found a nearly complete skeleton of a long-necked marine reptile called an Elasmosaurus. This fossil, about 100 million years old, was special because it was the first time a full Elasmosaurus skeleton, with both its head and body, had been found in Australia. The fossil, named Little Prince, was 6 meters long and was found by Cassandra Prince, who was part of a fossil hunting group called the Rock Chicks. Trapped giant. A man was exploring the woods, but then something unusual happened with him. At first, he felt like a giant was watching him from behind a tree, which scared him badly. But when he looked carefully, he noticed the face wasn't moving. So when he went closer, he was shocked because the face was carved into the tree, as if a giant was trapped inside it, trying to come out, but had been sealed there. Now, no one knows the background story of this, but who knows? There might be more mysteries hidden inside this tree. Lost City of Giants. Professor Timothy Insull from the University of Exeter led archaeologists who found an important historical site in Harlaya, Ethiopia. Locals say giants once lived there because the city's big stone buildings seemed too large for normal people to build. They uncovered a 12th century mosque and many objects, such as jewelry and coins from Egypt, India, China, and Madagascar. These finds show the city was a busy trade center between the 10th and 15th centuries. Megalodon teeth. In 2021, a discovery of prehistoric fossils was made in the Atacama Desert in northern Chile. It included numerous remains of the Megalodon shark, an enormous predator that lived millions of years ago. Megalodon teeth, some measuring over 7 inches, were among the fossils found. The region where the fossils were found was once underwater, but has since been lifted due to geological changes, which is why marine fossils are now located in what is now a desert. Miami Valley Skeleton. In Peru, a group of archaeologists found ancient remains that point to the existence of giant people. The discovery was made along the northern coast of Peru, where burial sites have always fascinated researchers. While digging, they uncovered a mass grave with several skeletons. one of which was 8.5 inches taller than what was typical for that time. The remains were well preserved and showed special features, giving clues about a unique culture and the people who lived there long ago. Giant tools. You might have seen many giant remains, but now I will show you a giant sword. A group of archaeologists were conducting research at an ancient site in Greece when they made a discovery that stunned them. Yes, I'm talking about the giant sword. It was so big that it was double the size of an average human. Surely this sword must have belonged to some giant from ancient times. And just imagining how powerful it must have been with this, we can only guess. Giant footprints.
There's the big toe, and the other 4 toes, down to the small toe, down to the heel.
An Australian archaeologist was researching giant humans and believed that he would surely find proof of them in Sri Lanka. He went to Sri Lanka, and his research proved to be correct. There, he found the mark of a giant foot on a mountain. The size of the giant can be estimated from the footmark, as it was nearly as big as the archaeologist himself. Unfortunately, nothing else was found there, but it was certain that a giant must have lived there.
People have been visiting here because they've been leaving little coins here.
Evidence of giants. A YouTuber, Emily Suzanne, came to explore the White Mountain in Wyoming. Everything was fine, until her eyes fell on a strange rock. There were multiple carvings on it, which were difficult to understand. But the truly shocking part came when she saw giant handprints on it. These handprints were double the size of her own hands. Seeing all these things, it seemed like a civilization had once lived there, and suddenly something happened that wiped them all out. She observed everything for a while, and then left the site. Sea dragon.
This is Temnodontosaurus, one of the biggest of the sea dragons so far discovered.
The Temnodontosaurus was a massive and fearsome ichthyosaur that lived around 200 million years ago during the Jurassic period, found in various locations, including a quarry near Stuttgart, Germany, and the Jurassic coast. It was one of the largest marine reptiles discovered, reaching lengths of over 10 meters, with evidence suggesting they could grow even larger. The Temnodontosaurus had blade-like teeth ideal for slicing flesh, and fossil evidence shows that it ate other ichthyosaurs, including baby ones, as tiny backbones of young ichthyosaurs were found preserved in its stomach. The combination of sharp teeth, large size, and powerful eyesight made it a top predator in Jurassic oceans.
They grew up to 10 meters long, and individual bones have been discovered, which suggests that they could grow even bigger.
And now, let us move on to our subscriber pick of the day. In 1895, prospectors near San Diego, California, reported discovering the remains of a giant, a claim that was not unique for the time. Similar stories of giant remains being found in the American West, particularly in California, were common during the 1800s. One of these reports suggested the giant was over 9 feet tall, while others stated it was about 8 feet 4 inches in height. In 1896, Fred Rawson, a deputy marshal from Berkeley, purchased the body and exhibited it to the public, charging admission. This was a popular way to make money by showcasing unusual finds. But then it disappeared from there, and no one has seen it again, which is still a mystery.